Hey everybody, it's Shaman Sister Sin, and you're listening to the Meditations and More podcast brought to you by shamanspiritcenter.com and littleshaman.org. That's me, the Little Shaman. Today I wanted to talk to you about what narcissists are hiding. This is something a lot of people wonder about, so I thought we could talk about it on the show today. Some of these things seem to actually contradict the narcissistic person's actions or their persona, but that's exactly the point. If you find these things hard to believe, it's just a testament to how good the narcissist act really can be. The first thing most narcissists are hiding is that they are having a lot of emotional trouble. People who are pathologically narcissistic generally have a lot of trouble with emotions, their own and the emotions of other people. They have trouble reading and recognizing them. They have trouble understanding them. They have trouble naming or defining them. They just have general trouble in this area. Many narcissistic people struggle with emotional regulation and they find their emotions scary or overwhelming. Others are so disconnected from them that they may be unaware they're even feeling them or what they mean. Many of the coping mechanisms we see in pathologically narcissistic people can be the result of these emotional troubles, such as projection, gaslighting, idealization, devaluing, or discarding others, and more. For example, at the core of the pathologically narcissistic personality is deep-seated shame, and this drives an enormous amount of their behavior, often completely unbeknownst to them. This shame wears many masks, and it can look like many things, including rage, jealousy, envy, paranoia, self-aggrandizement, egotism, and more. When dealing with people who are truly narcissistic, it's important to remember that even though this person might be intelligent, well spoken, and chronologically a grown up, you are likely dealing with someone who is using a maladapted, dysfunctional adult version of the emotional coping and regulation skills of a toddler or an even younger child. This doesn't excuse their behavior in any way, but it can make it a little easier to understand. Another thing they're hiding is that they are not who they pretend to be, ever. At first glance, narcissistic people often present themselves as very different from who they really believe themselves to be. It's not a great act, nor is it capable of withstanding very much scrutiny at all, but it can be very misleading if someone is not looking closely or if they don't know what they're looking at. It's often said that narcissistic people tell on themselves, and this is true, but if you don't know what to look for, you might miss it. For example, the narcissist that is striving to come across as confident and self-assured can be very convincing. But if you pay attention, you'll notice there are holes in the performance. Because they're only pretending to be what they think is acceptable or admirable, they don't always get it right. They may be a little too braggadocious, a little too assertive, a little too self-assured. This overacting is very common regardless of what image they're trying to project. That's because this projected image is an overcompensation for the self-hatred, weakness, insecurity, helplessness, or whatever else that they feel that they're trying to hide. It's not genuine. So the helpless victim is a little too helpless or has a few too many hard luck stories. The happy-go-lucky person is a little too happy-go-lucky. The tough guy is a little too tough. The sensitive lover is a little too solicitous. These may, in fact, be actual facets of their personality, but they often seem overblown and superficial because they're being used as a diversion from other things, and in their own way, they are as over the top as all of the other facets of the narcissist personality. Remember that people who truly have a quality don't have to try so hard to prove it to everybody else and make note of behavior that contradicts the image you're being presented. Someone who is happy and confident doesn't need to hurt other people when they get upset. They aren't jealous or envious. Someone who is in control and self-assured doesn't need to control other people. They don't need to play power games. In general, people who really are whatever narcissists are just pretending to be don't behave the way that narcissists behave. Another thing they're hiding is that they don't like themselves very much. Contrary to popular belief, narcissists are not overflowing with self-esteem. They are chronically self-focused and they are self-important, but that's not the same thing. When it comes to how they truly feel about themselves, narcissists are generally at the extreme low end of the spectrum. Pathological, toxic narcissism is not the result of having too much self-esteem or self-worth. It's the result of having virtually none at all and no ability to create any. Pathologically narcissistic people are like very young children in this way. They rely on others to reflect who they are back to them because they lack the ability to form a true and stable self-concept on their own. The inability to do this is a pretty serious handicap for a human being, and it requires narcissists to use other people's reactions to them as a way to create some approximation of self-worth. This primitive survival mechanism is called mirroring, and it's the main function of other people in a narcissist's life. Regardless of the relationship, doesn't matter, this is the main purpose of that relationship. Not only do pathologically narcissistic people have no self-worth to speak of, they're often consumed with self-hatred and shame surrounding who they are. This is what is behind all of their paranoia, jealousy, envy, rage, devaluation, discarding all of their false selves, and more. If you love yourself, if you truly love and accept yourself, you don't need to create a false self to show other people because you know that who you are is good enough. Once again, make note of behavior that contradicts the image you're being presented with. It can be hard to believe this sometimes, depending on the individual you might be dealing with, but that just shows how good this act really can be. Many of them are extremely adept at hiding this. They've had to be. This is how they've survived. And some are so disconnected from their inner landscape and from their feelings that they sincerely might not even realize this is the case. However, if we pay attention to the narcissist, to their behavior, to the things they say, and we understand what we're actually looking at, if we learn to see the misdirection and the misleading for what these things really are, it becomes impossible to miss. It's like pulling the curtain back on the little man behind the big head in The Wizard of Oz. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it, and the illusion does not work anymore. Another thing they're trying to hide is that they're afraid. When we observe the behavior of pathologically narcissistic people, we start to see something that they would probably rather we did not see, and that's fear. It can be hard to see at first sometimes, depending on how they react to things, but to the astute observer, it becomes very obvious after a while. Fear is one of the narcissistic person's biggest motivations, even if they don't realize that. Many people believe that one of their biggest motivations is power and control, and that's true on the surface, but what is behind the desire for power and control? What makes someone feel that they need this so badly? The answer is fear. Fear of being powerless, fear of being out of control, fear of not being able to meet their own needs, fear for their own survival. They also fear the huge amounts of deep-seated pathological shame that they are usually carrying around. This is often mistaken for remorse by the narcissist and the people around them, but it isn't. Remorse is for other people, and it's usually connected to empathy. Shame is for the self, and it's not connected to empathy in any way. It's all about them. It also usually has nothing to do with anything they've done. It might seem connected, but it's only connected on the surface. The thing they've been called out for is not the real focus, nor is the hurt they've caused the other person. Being called out triggers the shame of being thought of as a bad person who does bad things. It's another example of how horrible they are. This is the focus of the shame, and this thought process does not really address or even acknowledge the wrong that they've done to the other person at all, though this can be difficult to see at first. Their focus is on them, and it stays there. The shame experienced by truly narcissistic people is generally of tidal wave proportions, and with no coping mechanisms to deal with it except their various manifestations of avoidance and denial, they live in fear of being unable to outrun this tidal wave one day. Many narcissists are actually afraid of other people too. They fear trusting anybody or caring about people. They fear allowing others to care about them. These, quote, good feelings inevitably trigger, quote, bad ones, and they are unable to deal with the emotional fallout and the confusion that follows. They enjoy somebody acting as if they care, but if someone says they care, they must be lying. If someone really does care, there must be something wrong with them. This seems to be experienced by narcissists as feelings for and opinions about the other person rather than as the self-hatred that it actually is, and it's reacted to the same way. The other person is treated as the source of the confusion, and they are blamed for that. Inside, the narcissist cannot understand or take ownership of their feelings, and so they look around for ways that other people are causing them to feel the way that they do. Narcissists don't really understand how the world works, how other people operate, and most importantly, they don't understand how they themselves operate. So many of them are simply walking around imitating what they see others do to get their needs met, and often making a big mess out of it because they don't really get it. They can't trust other people, they can't trust themselves, and they have nothing real to base anything on because of the instability of their identities. That's scary. Another thing pathologically narcissistic people are hiding is that they know something's wrong. Part of the reason that they're afraid, and one of the biggest things they're hiding, is the fact that they know, they are sure, they 100% believe that they are different from other people. Not just different, in fact, bad. One of the reasons the narcissist creates the false persona is because they are convinced that they are so unlovable and disgusting that they have to pretend to be somebody else in order to be accepted on any level. Many people think that that's true, that what they are hiding is their evil, abusive side, but that's actually not the case. The evil, abusive side is the second level of protection for what they are actually hiding. The weak, helpless, infantile core of unlovable, disgusting, horrible filth that they believe themselves to be. This goes way back to before they were ever abusive to anybody. This is very, very deep-seated. It doesn't have anything to do with anything they've actually done. Truly narcissistic people are the most self-loathing people on the planet, whether they act like that or not. The false persona exists for the same reason the abusive side exists. Both of these are reactions to needing to hide and protect who they really believe themselves to be. The false persona is the smiling greeter at the front door inviting you into the house, and the abusive side is the 85-pound attack dog in front of all the doors in the house you're not allowed to go in. Both of these things are real in their own way, and both of them are also fake in their own way. All the sides that you see are actual parts of who they could have actually been if their identity was not fractured the way that it is. But they're not stable. What is behind all those guarded doors is as close to the real truth as you can get with a pathologically narcissistic person. And the majority of the time, it's not accessible. Not even to them. That attack dog doesn't just attack outsiders who try to get in those doors. It attacks the narcissist too. That's one of the reasons they are so miserable. And that is another thing they are hiding. They are very unhappy people. As you can see from this list, narcissistic people have a shot at being the most unhappy people on the planet. It's not a surprise. They are terrified, self-loathing people who have only rigid, maladaptive, primitive coping mechanisms to deal with the really serious problems that they're facing. Consequently, they become stuck in mindsets that are harmful, self-sabotaging, damaging to themselves and others, or unrealistic, but they don't realize that. Because they're so afraid and so avoidant, and because it is a pathology, they do not realize these things, and they continue to believe other people are simply spoiling it for them somehow, either for no reason or because the narcissist's self-hatred causes them to believe that everyone else hates them as well. This usually triggers massive anger, depression, resentment, and more on top of their already existing dysregulated or completely disowned emotions. None of this is a recipe for happiness. Pathologically narcissistic people are in a constant state of survival mode, and because of the rigidity, the fixed beliefs, and the inability to adapt, many have lost any capacity for true happiness if they ever had it at all. They seem to view themselves as helpless boats adrift on the sea of life, unable to do anything but react to what they perceive is being done to them. Even when they seem to be taking action, investigation usually shows us that they are actually reacting to their own emotions or beliefs, which they often interpret illogically as things that other people have done to them. Anyone would be unhappy with that mindset, and the rigidity of pathologically narcissistic traits makes it extremely difficult for this to be changed. The arrested emotional development that we usually see in this kind of personality makes it hard for them to even see any of this, let alone change it, and the maladaptive coping mechanisms cause them to perceive harmful intentions in anybody who tries to help. So there you have it. These are some of the biggest things that Dr. Jekyll is hiding. The important thing to remember is that by understanding what you're dealing with, you can better understand the reality of the situation, which is that this is a pathology. It's not your fault. It's not your responsibility to fix it. More than that, you don't have the ability to fix it. If someone has a life-threatening illness, for example, but they refuse to go to the doctor, you can't do anything about that decision. You can't do anything at all except decide how and if you want to move forward with the relationship. That is what educating yourself about this and understanding it helps you to do. Make informed decisions. That is how you empower yourself. I hope this clears a few things up for you. As always, I look forward to your comments, questions, and suggestions, so please keep those coming. I take appointments online, via text, via email, through Skype, and over the phone. So if you're interested in speaking with me one-on-one, you can visit littleshaman.org to do that. If you're interested in checking out any of the workshops that I teach a few times a month, you can do that on littleshaman.org as well. You've been listening to the Meditations and More podcast brought to you by earthmamacbd.com and littleshaman.org. That's right, it's back. That's me, the Little Shaman. May the Great Spirit bless you and have a wonderful day.